The sound came muffled, swallowed by the thick pines and the roar of the Cascade River, but those who lived long enough in the valley knew the difference between a branch snapping and the rhythm of a rifle. Folks brushed it off at probably a hunter, probably nothing. That's how Timber Creek worked. People noticed things, but they didn't say them out loud, and no one noticed more than Sierra Blake, the woman who had worked at the Blue Moon Diner for 8 quiet years, serving eggs and coffee with the kind of silence that made her almost ghost-like. To Sierra, invisibility was survival. Every morning before dawn, she left her cabin, boots sinking into the dew-soaked earth, and moved like a shadow through the forest. Her body remembered routines, her mind tried hard to forget low crawls, combat trolls, timed breathing in pitch blackness. 8 years hadn't dulled her instincts. They only made her sharper, more hidden. Nobody in Timber Creek could imagine that the woman refilling their coffee cups had once been Sergeant Sierra Blake, decorated for valor in Afghanistan, scarred by a war that had stolen more than it gave. She didn't talk about it, not to anyone. But Timber Creek, with its habit of knowing too much, had a way of peeling back layers. The change started with a girl. Her name was Leela, 14, maybe 15, thin as the reeds that grew by the Cascade River, with bruises she pretended were clumsy accidents. Sierra noticed them when Leela came to the diner after school, ordering the cheapest thing on the menu, a grilled cheese and water. Sierra had seen eyes like hers before, guarded, scanning for exits, always calculating. One night, Sierra followed Leela out of town, her boots crunching lightly on the gravel road. She watched from the tree line as Leela slipped into a rundown trailer where yelling spilled out the cracked windows. Sierra's hands clenched until her nails bit skin. She knew that sound too, of the growl of a man drunk on power and liquor. It was the sound she had heard from her father's mouth, long before she ever wore a uniform. Sierra didn't interfere that night, not yet, but something inside her shifted. The second push came from Timber Creek itself. A week later, a storm hit, flooding roads and knocking out power. The Cascade River swelled, roaring dangerously close to the highway bridge. When a car skidded off the road into the current, half the town gathered at the riverbank, watching helplessly as water swallowed metal. It was Sierra who moved. Without hesitation, she dove in, cutting through the icy current with a precision that shocked those who knew her only as the quiet diner waitress. She reached the sinking car, yanked the door open, and pulled a screaming child into her arms. By the time the sheriff's deputies arrived, Sierra had dragged both passengers to safety, shivering but steady. The town cheered her that night, but Sierra didn't hear applause. She heard the voice in her head of the one that asked why she kept hiding when people needed her strength. Word about Sierra spread. Leela began showing up at the diner more often, sitting at the counter, shoulders loosening bit by bit. Sheriff Callahan stopped in, not just for pie but for conversation, careful and curious about the woman he'd realized wasn't just another waitress. And the townsfolk of Timber Creek, instead of ignoring Sierra, began smiling, thanking her, calling her name like it had always belonged to them. It terrified her, because being seen meant being vulnerable, and Sierra had built her entire life on the promise that no one would ever know enough to hurt her again. But then came the night Leela showed up at Sierra's cabin, her cheeks swollen, her voice breaking. "I can't go back," she whispered. "Please, he broken bar, don't make me go back." Sierra looked into those eyes, so much like her own when she was that age, and something inside her finally cracked open. She couldn't hide behind silence anymore, not if it meant leaving someone else to drown in shadows the way she once had. The battle that followed wasn't fought with rifles or tactics. It was fought in a courtroom, in long nights of paperwork, in Sierra standing tall beside Leela and refusing to let the town pretend it didn't see. The man who hurt Leela was stripped of his power, his voice finally silenced, and Sierra, who once thought she could only serve through invisibility, realized that courage sometimes meant standing in plain sight, letting others know the truth of who you were. Timber Creek saw her now. They saw the soldier, the survivor, the woman who had carried her own pain for too long but refused to let it break someone else. The diner regulars still ordered their usual coffee, but now they asked Sierra how she was doing, and meant it. Leela stayed close, finding in Sierra the family she had always needed. Sierra Blake had spent years trying to disappear, but in Timber Creek, among the pines and the rushing waters of the Cascade, she discovered that sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't surviving unseen. It's letting yourself be found, and in that quiet mountain town, Sierra wasn't invisible anymore. She was home.